Okay, thanks for joining us tonight, guys, at the World Horse Racing Look Back. We're joined by Mike Smith and Gary Stevens, Hall of Fame jockeys, and we're here to talk about a very special horse race at the Breeders Cup between Beholder and Songbird. But before we go into it, I just want to sort of get a bit of background on you guys. You're obviously very close and known each other for quite a long time. So could we just get an idea of when you guys sort of first heard of each other, when you were younger, when you were kind of young gun guys, and how that friendship developed?
Yeah,
Go
it was
ahead, Gary.
19. Go ahead, Mike.
No, you go ahead. I'm listening.
I'd flown into Hot Springs, Arkansas, to ride the Arkansas Derby on Tanks Prospect in 1985, and we had the same valet. I'd heard of Mike. He had not yet went to New York, where his career really took off, but I was starting to really roll in Southern California. Anyway, we had the same valet, and my older brother Scott and Mike actually knew each other before Mike and I did, and they're extremely close too. But I wound up winning the Arkansas Derby that day, and Mike and we were carrying on all day long, hit it off pretty good. And anyway, he asked me for my whip, if he could have my whip after I won the Arkansas
Mhm.
Derby. I gave it to him, and he said, "Hey, by the way," he says, "I'm getting married tonight, and if you and Eddie Delahousie want to come to my uh, wedding uh,
Party,
after
yeah.
party, love to have you guys." So Eddie and we went and had a bite to eat, and we went to the party, and they just shut down the bar. And I looked at Eddie. I said, they can't shut down the bar right now. And he said, no. So Eddie and we reached in our pockets, and we opened the bar back up, and Mike and our relationship just grew from there.
I've owed him ever since. I couldn't afford to keep the bar open, so he kept it open for us.
That's not the first or last time we reopened a bar
No,
and closed it down.
he was.
Now, there's been plenty of drinking in bars and um, riding horses against each other and being jockeys in weighing rooms and stuff. But the other day I was listening to a podcast with Mike Joyce that featured you guys, and among all the good stuff, there's been some fairly interesting, colourful relationships between the two of you as well. Um, he got some really good perlers out of you, but there was one story that sort of was left unexplained about how one of you hit the other one with a landline phone. Can we hear a bit more about that? What
He's
was that
He
close
about?
to
says
this.
it was a water. He said it was a water
Water.
bottle. Trust me, I I still got a bump on my head from that telephone. But that's a long story, a fun story,
It,
but
it,
uh,
we're more like brothers, so as you well know, brothers have their moments when when they get into little bitty fights. We've never had a huge one, but we've had some pretty good ones, and that was one of them. We'd had too much fun, and our beds were side by side, two little twin beds here in this guest house that we were staying at, and he just didn't want to go to sleep. He wanted to keep on, he wanted to keep on going, and I told him if he moved one more time, I was going to hit him with his water bottle, and sure enough, he moved, and I swung that thing across the across over, and it popped him right in the head. He swears it was a phone. He fell off over the other side. He says, "I can't believe you hit me with the phone."
And what I mean, you've obviously been in a few scrapes together over the years. What would the styles be? What would be the differing styles?
well,
He liked
they
to
weren't
attack.
really fights. They were wrestling matches, more light, and I'd got him. We were wrestling, and it's his aunt's. It wasn't just a guest room. It was a guest house, a museum, an art museum with some rather high-priced artwork on the
Yeah.
walls, and
Wow.
sort of a famous place. And we'd started pretty early in the morning. We had one of those brunch lunches with a little whiskey involved with all of his buddies. We were in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and we went and bought some Indian uh, war dance music, and we had this stuff blaring in there. Well, that music, it kind of fired us up, so we decided we started wrestling a little bit, and I was a wrestler all through my childhood and through high school, and I got him in this hold called the guillotine that you wrap your leg around the other guys and his arm around the back of my head, and you just stretch him out. I said, "You give." And you can hurt a guy pretty good, and he wouldn't give up. And something popped, and how he got out of the guillotine, I don't know, but uh, I popped something in his knee, and he went ape shit, and that was that was kind of how it
Located
all
my
went
knee.
down.
That's how. Anyway,
Um,
I got out and the fight was on.
which brings us seamlessly to this battle that we're here to talk about tonight, between you two and your two horses, Beholder and Songbird. Now, coming into the race, we just want to talk about, sort of set the scene a bit. Now, Gary, you were 52 at the time, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes.
And you've had a couple of hip and knee surgeries. Not many top class sportsmen are still going at that age. Mike, you're still there. Can you just sort of tell us about that time for you, Gary, and sort of the comebacks you'd had and what it was like to be still at the top of your game, just like Mike is now?
Well, it's an interesting story with Beholder. I'd come out of retirement at the end of 2012, had a great 2013, won the distaff on Beholder, wound up winning the Breeders' Cup Classic on Mucho Macho Man, and finally my right knee, it got an infection in it from too many injections, and they told me that I had no choice but to have a replacement. So uh, decided to get it done, and Mike was my replacement for Beholder. He picked up Beholder and actually won a prep race on her, and then he was supposed to ride her in the Breeders' Cup, and she got sick and she couldn't run, and she was actually meant to have gone through the sales ring after that Breeders' Cup, and when she got sick, uh, she couldn't return. But I'd had the knee replacement, and Beholder had time off. And by the time I was ready to ride again, uh, Richard, he's probably the most loyal trainer that I ever rode for in my career, and I think Mike will vouch for that. The only way you really lose a mount with Richard Mandela is if you take off of him. If you take off of a horse you've been riding, he's not going to fire you off everything, but you'll probably never ride that horse again. But he was between a rock and a hard spot of who to put back on Beholder. And I was fortunate enough it all worked out good because Mike wound up with Songbird, and they were going to be on a collision course anyway. And if he was riding both horses, he would have had to make a decision of who he would have had to ride. And I know that would have been very difficult. But uh, yeah, I'd gone through a lot, but I was fortunate enough to come back at a high level and have a guy trust me with a prosthetic knee. I believe might be one of the only guys to win grade ones with a fake knee, but um, I I know that Richard still to this day he uses Mike's services any chance he gets to, in not only because Mike's a great rider, but out of repayment for, you know, Richard. I know he felt bad about not putting Mike back on, but he was between a rock and a hard spot, and I was fortunate enough to get back on her.
How's that for you, Mike? To be on it, there's not often you get off a horse
If
like that.
I would have done the same, I would have done the same thing if I was Mr. Mandela. I would have certainly put him back on. I mean, he had all the chemistry and history with her. I just filled in for one race. I mean, Gary had already done tremendous things with her, and he knew her much better than I did, and certainly got more run out of her. So I would have done the same thing. And he was just being loyal. It wasn't that Gary ever took off of her. He couldn't help it. So I pretty much knew going in that he was going to get the mount back.
He probably gave you the mount back, Gary, because you're going to give him the guillotine otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah, those days are over with.
And for you, Mike, you know, I think you guys rode virtually almost every race at the Breeders' Cup that year. And Mike, you're over 50 now, and you're still going. What is the, you know, that there aren't many top class sportsmen of your ages or the age that you were at the time, Gary. You know, how do you keep going? What's the, not the secret, obviously, but what's the, the ingredients, the fitness, the nutrition, or just up here, what is it?
I think the main thing is up here, but
yeah.
Go ahead, Mike.
It's a bit of everything. Even, I mean, Gary talks about the knee replacement, but I mean, this guy was walking probably a couple hours after they had done the surgery, and it didn't seem like it was a month after that. He was already getting around really well. So you knew he was going to come back quicker than what people thought. I mean, he was determined to, and it's just that determination and staying, getting as healthy and as fit as you can. And I've been blessed at an early age. If I did anything right early on, was I got into physical fitness instead of playing golf and other stuff, or just sitting around on my days off. I love going to the gym. I love working out, and I haven't ever really been seriously injured other than my back in 1998. And other than that, I've been very, very healthy. And when you get the opportunity to ride the kind of horses horses that me and Gary have been blessed to have ridden and riding, the up here is what you need more than really anything else. You set those kind of horses up, and you put them in the right kind of place, and get them into that good, happy, comfortable rhythm. And when you call on them, they're going to run.
And what would you both be best at in terms of gym or cardio, or what are those? What do you excel at?
Mike excels in the gym. With the knee injury that I had, it was going downhill quickly again, and I couldn't run. It just jarred me up, and we were in Del Mar, and I would walk the turf course every single day. Mike would be out there running, and he would slow down, and I'd walk fast. I mean, I'd get a workout out of it, and we'd have our sweats on and stuff, and eventually he'd slow down. He'd walk with me for a while, and then I started jogging with him a little bit. When I had the new knee put in, well, then my groin on my opposite leg started hurting. I thought it was my groin. I thought I had a groin injury, and it turns out I didn't. I'd gone bone to bone on the hip, and it was from running and stuff, and just jarring. But there wasn't a lot I could do cardio wise other than get on my Equicizer and ride that. I'd ride a bike to get my cardio. But once we were riding races, you stay pretty fit. But Mike's always been a gym rat, and I've never liked the gym. I prefer to I'm active. I do stuff around the house. I'm always lifting, and that's my weight training and stuff. And I tended to get big. If I went in the gym, then my shoulders would start getting bigger, and the arms, everything, and that became, causes weight problem. Muscle's heavier than fat is. So we all have different styles of getting ourselves right, and we know when we're right and at our best. And I think mentally, when you're mentally in a good place, that's when you perform at your best. And Mike and I riding together for so many years, he would come to me, or I'd go to him if he wasn't riding the race. And, hey, how would you ride this race? Am I reading this right? And, yeah, you're reading it right. Do this, do that. And so when we'd ride against each other, I mean, even on a Wednesday afternoon, and maybe, a maiden race or a turf race and 5 and 6 horse fields, it was like playing a chess match between the two of us, but we both knew each other's moves. We both pretty much knew what the other guy was going to do before we went out there. But it was a lot of fun, and I think that we drove each other to be better. I know early on in my career, and the same with Mike being based on the East Coast, riding with Angel Cordero, George Velasquez, and the great riders he rode with out there. I was fortunate enough to ride with Chris McCarron, Lafitte Pinkai, Eddie De La Houssaye, Sandy Hawley, so many good riders. And I always felt that the better the competition, just like in any sport, the better competition you face, the better you're going to perform. And I think that Mike and I riding against each other, we really kept each other honest of giving our best, and we drove each other. And if he beat me and outrode me, we are happy for each other, man. We weren't jealous or anything like that. It was just, hey, good job, man. You got me out there, or vice versa. Give a little smile and say, you got me. Good job.
Before this race that we're about to talk about, what would have been the race that you guys against each other would have been, that we would have been talking about now, if you see what I mean? So what would have been the sort of defining matchup between the two of you before Songbird Beholder?
I'm not really sure. I could tell you. I'll tell you one time though. I was riding a really good filly. Her name was Azeri, and she was pretty much unbeatable at the time. And Gary had a pretty nice filly going into this Group 1 race that we were going to ride together. And I knew he was going to do something early on. I didn't know exactly what he was going to do, but I knew he was going to try something to beat me, because it was the only way he's going to beat me, by doing something out of the ordinary. Well, he made this middle move that was, I mean, just nothing like him at all. He would never move that early, and he just came from out of it, just from nowhere, all of a sudden, early on in the race, and just try to get a neck or so in front of me, and just really try to intimidate my filly by coming, leaning on her a little bit. And fortunate for me, it wasn't enough to get her beat. But I remember telling him at the 3/8 pole, I said, "Man, all these years of fist fighting, I never thought you'd pull a knife on me." And he pulled a knife that day on me, but it didn't work.
It did work. I committed suicide early.
It was a great time. I mean, he got close to beating her.
Was that the Apple Blossom?
No, it was a race here at Santa Anita. I think one of the other great races that Gary will tell you about, where he was blessed to have picked up a spectacular horse, and he went on to win multiple Grade 1s, was Thunder Gulch. I was actually riding him before Gary was riding over in contract. Where were you, Gary, at the time? Japan
Hong Kong.
or
Hong Kong. I was racing in Hong Kong.
And we were going into the Derby, and I had two really good mounts, a horse called Talking Man and Thunder Gulch going in, and I chose Talking Man to ride in the Kentucky Derby. And Lucas was reaching out to Gary to try to get him to come, and Gary was going to come. He was kind of on the fence, wasn't sure, and I told Wayne I'd give him a call myself. And so I told Gary, I said, "Listen, I don't know if he can win the race, but he's going to run well. I really think the horse I'm riding is a horse that can win the Kentucky Derby." Anyway, Gary winds up coming down to ride Thunder Gulch in the Kentucky Derby, and I remember heading for home. I'd gotten through on the fence and then opened up about a length heading for home, and I thought, here it goes, man. I'm going to win my first Kentucky Derby. And about 2 jumps later, this horse just flies by me, and I see the Tabor Silks with that big orange dot on the back, and I said, there he goes. So I went from thinking I was going to win the Kentucky Derby to all the wind coming out of my sails, but then I turned into a cheerleader, cheering for my brother, So it was a great time for him to come back to the States.
Is that him behind you, Gallery, isn't it?
Yeah, that's actually it.
Right
there it is.
Yeah, under the Twin Spires. Yeah.
Out of all the horses that you've ridden, why have you got him on your wall? Thunder Gulch.
Well, I got all 3 of my derbies in my office here. If you win the Kentucky Derby, you better put it on showcase. And I was blessed to win it 3 times. And Mike talking about cheerleader. I can't remember who I rode when Mike won the Derby on Giacomo, but I was done early, man. And Mike was coming from the cloud, and he passed me. And I was so far back, I literally, I wasn't going to get a placing, and I'm trying to look and see if he gets up, and I was darn near a 16th of a mile behind when he crossed the finish line, and I started looking at the matrix board in the infield. I literally turned into a spectator during the race and rooting for him, and we pulled up, and I said, "Did you get there?" He says, "Yeah, I got there." So. You know, I think we were always like that. You know, if I couldn't win, if I couldn't be the guy to beat Mike, then I was rooting for Mike, the same as I did for my big brother Scott. The same thing. I'd do anything I could to beat him, but if I couldn't win, I was rooting for them.
Now, so to go back to this this race, coming into it, Beholder had lost 3 races. She'd lost to Stellar Wind, she'd lost to California Chrome in the Pacific Classic, and there were quite a lot of people who were saying, "Oh, she's past her best" and all that sort of thing. What did you guys feel like, Gary, on the inside? What were you feeling coming into the race about, her state?
Well, the Breeders' Cup was the main goal for Richard Mandela from the start of the year, and I knew that, and I knew the way that Richard trains and the way he thinks, and I was part of the team. I knew what the plan was going to be, and the first time we matched up with Stellar Wind, I'll be honest with you, Richard and I both underestimated Stellar Wind's talents, and he didn't have her cranked up fully tight, and he basically told me, he says, "Look, we're probably a race away, or 2 races away, but you know, do what you can to win. Don't kill her. We've got to get to the Breeders' Cup the best way we can get to the Breeders' Cup." And I made a run at Stellar Wind. I thought I had her, and behold her, she was running, but she wasn't giving me the same feel that she had the previous year. And you know, she had the scratch out of the Breeders' Cup Classic the year before with American Pharoah because she'd gotten sick and hadn't traveled well, and so that was the whole goal all year long. And I had worked her 3 weeks before the Santa Anita Derby, and it was actually 2 weeks before the Santa Anita Derby, and Richard wanted a stiff mile workout in her. I had company, and we worked from 7 furlong pole back around to the 7 furlong pole, and she went the mile in like 1:36 and 3 and galloped out huge. So I knew that I was sitting on the monster beholder going into the distaff. I knew that she was probably 6 to 7 lengths better than she had been all season long, and Mike wasn't taking her for granted either, I don't think.
And Mike, what about you? I mean, you were obviously flying into the race. She'd never lost. How are you? How are you feeling? And how did you rate your chances?
I was feeling great. The only concern that I mean, if we had any concerns going in, is I did a lot of traveling. We did a lot of traveling. We traveled 3 times leading into the Breeders' Cup instead of ever getting a chance just to stay home going into it, which a lot of times when you're shipping that much, it takes a little bit out of them. That was really our only concern. Another concern was that I knew that Beholder was probably going to get the kind of race that she's been looking for, that she hadn't gotten in her few previous races leading into the Breeders' Cup. She was going to get pace up in front this time. She went from a filly early on where she was very aggressive. Beholder was, and used to always be on the lead, and she would run her best races that way. But then as she got older, I think Gary will tell you as well that her best races started coming where she could sit back and have a target. She loved to run at a horse, and she could run at anything or anybody, especially if which most can when it sets up right. So I knew he was going to get probably the kind of pace scenario that he would like. My only hopes were that I was on a filly that was just talented enough to be able to hold him off, because I knew at some point, at some place in the race, he's going to make a run at me. And I figured it was going to be somewhere fairly early, not very late. He was going to take it to me. So at some point early, Beholder was a big, powerful mare. whereas Songbird wasn't as big as her, but probably a little more athletic early on in the race than she was. So I knew that they were going to come down. It was going to be a battle at some point. And believe it or not, I really, although there were some extremely talented fillies in the race, there was some good fillies in there. I thought it would come down to me and him going in. I really did. And man, they did ever set up for probably one of the greatest distaffs of all time.
Well, I think we can watch it now. I mean, everyone knows that there was a quarter of a mile stretch battle between the two. So if we start the film now of the race, we can start from the very beginning here. You guys could talk us through. So Mike, why did you take the lead?
Well, I'm in the one hole, so I wanted to get away very well with Songbird. Was really good out of the gate, and then he didn't disappoint me. We caught a flyer leaving there in the GLC, and I thought, wow, this is everything I could ask for right now. I'm confident. I'm just hoping that someone don't make me go any faster than I wanted to go at this point. But I was really happy with the way where we were at and the way she was traveling.
And it wasn't
and like what
a fast pace, was it?
It wasn't brutal, but no, I mean, we were running right along.
They were. It was honest fractions. When we came away from there, Beholder broke. She broke sweet, smooth, and Stellar Wind was gone, and she was of some concern, I think, to Mike and myself. But she was out of the race immediately, and it became just like Mike said. Right here, man, I'm loaded. Mike's going steady on his pace. I mean, he was legitimate fractions, but going into the turn here, I thought that it was time to come up and put some pressure on the younger filly, me on the seasoned mare. Mike?
He used that sacrifice horse there in between us to do it. He moved up on the outside of that horse. That horse makes him put the pressure on me, and then he just came and took it to me when he thought it was time, to really pick it up and ask Beholder. We're at this point right here now. We're heading for home, and I asked Songbird to kick it in, and she's just what a race. I get goosebumps watching this, but he couldn't get rid of me here. He didn't go on and pass me, and I thought at this point here, I said, I know Songbird. She's a fighter. She ain't gonna let him by. And it was pretty much a fight from that moment on, all the way to the wire. And I didn't know who won, to be honest with you.
Now,
yeah, what
little chat. You're having a little chat here. Can you remember what you were saying to each other?
Yeah, I think I do. I didn't know who won. I had, I was so, I thought I was in front the jump before, and I wasn't sure if I was in front the jump after, but we were so tight. But Gary kind of gave me the little fist pump and man, he ain't ever wrong about those photo finishes, man. He was pretty confident. I think that he had won. And I just looked over and I said, are you sure? And he goes, yeah. I said, well, congratulations, brother. I said, he goes, I needed this one. He said, I know you did. That was pretty much it. And then I was just really praying that he was wrong.
Well, when we pulled up, Donna Brothers, she was on horseback working for NBC, and she came up, and she's very close friends with Mike and I both. We used to ride with her, been friends forever, and she said, "Gee, are you sure you got there?" And I said, "Yeah, I think." And she said, "I'm not sure." She said, I'm in my IFB right now, and they don't know if you won it or not." And then like 20 seconds later, I was jogging back and went in front of the NBC set with Jerry Bailey and Tom Hammond, everybody up there. And Bailey hollered out, he said, "Congratulations, G." And I could hear the announcer, Larry Comas, announced that, we'd won the race. And I let out a sigh of relief. And then when I saw the photo up on the board, I said, man, I'm lucky. I truly, it would have been a fitting finish if those two girls could have dead heated there. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Neither one of them deserved to lose. And it was the most epic race classic race that I ever was fortunate enough to ride in. And unfortunately, there was a loser and there was a winner. But
Now,
it was a great race.
the thing that,
That was one of those races where you, even though I came away on the losing end, you didn't feel like you lost. I wasn't in front right at the wire, but both horses, just the battle they were having, it was just he was in front, I was in front, he was in front, I was in front. It was just that way where he just happened to be in front at the wire, and then the fact that it was him, that beat me, that it was Gary. So I couldn't be upset, although I certainly wanted to come out on the winning end. I still felt like I did somehow, some way. I still felt pretty good walking away from all that because she showed and they both showed how incredible they both were.
Well, Gary said afterwards, I think he said this was horse racing at its best. Now, for me, you watching that, when the two horses come together, I was reading some of the post-race quotes, and one of you said that as you pulled clear, the noise and of everyone else just disappeared. What's that like to sort of share that stage in a stretch battle like that in a classic?
Well, it's what everybody was hoping for. I mean, as a kid growing up, when two champions met, you hope to see that kind of battle. And man, when I really attacked Songbird, I remembered a race at Saratoga where another filly had attacked Songbird fairly early, Mike. I think it was at the Mother Goose or one of them, the Alabama. I can't remember which race it was, but it was a great horse race. But I said to myself, all right, that was a 3-year-old filly that attacked him early. Let's see how she likes this big mare getting after it from the 5/16 pole. And there was some separation in between us as we came into the stretch. And I said, all right, I'm going to let Songbird float over and try and intimidate Songbird. I said, I'm gonna lay on her. And when I did it, when I moved Beholder over next to Songbird, I said, oh man, why did I do that? Because she loved it. Songbird, man, you could see her eye roll back in her head. And I'm like, here we go.
And for you guys, like, growing up, I mean, Gary, you obviously rode in England quite a lot, and you must have sort of seen the Grundy v Bustino, and there's every racing country has their great stretch battles. I mean, what prior to this race, what were the great stretch battles that you guys had liked to watch growing up, and I suppose as a young sports stars?
Well, one of my favorite races to watch as a spectator, because I didn't ride the Preakness in 1989. Great battle with Sunday Silence and Easy Goer. Sort of the same thing as this battle was. I mean, they hooked up from the head of the stretch, and Pat Valenzuela at it, and Pat Day down on the inside. And I was in the jocks room at Hollywood Park watching this battle, and Pat was left-handed and he went right-handed. He had Easy Goer in tight already, and I said, man, don't get your number, don't be bumping on him, get your number taken down here. So that was one of my favorite races, even though I was still riding up to that point. And then I was involved in another distaff. It was a totally different kind of race with Winning Colors and Personal Ensign, and I was leading, and Personal Ensign was undefeated with Randy Romero for Shug McGahee, Phipps Stables, and she came and nailed me at the finish. It was every bit as close as what this photo finish was, but a totally different kind of race. We didn't hook up at the head of the stretch. She came and nailed the tiring Winning Colors.
And Mike,
those two races he just mentioned right there were two of my favorites watching, that I wasn't involved in either one. Watching the Easy Goer Sunday Silence all three races were amazing to watch as far as the Triple Crown goes. And then that distaff with Winning Colors and Personal Ensign was another one of one of my favorites. That probably would have gone down as the best distaff ever until maybe this race between me and Gary.
Well, thank you very much for your time, guys. That was excellent, and good luck over the next few days and months with everything.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having us. He's getting a chance to go back and watch these races, get you all fired up again. You got me sweating now. I got to go out and run because I beaten that last one, so now I got to go train.
Thank you, guys. I just got to say that Beholder, when she retired after that year, that was pretty much the end of my career. I was done for. I didn't have any more. I had 2-3 horses that retired that year, and that was the beginning of the end for me. Got me back in the announcer's booth.
Well, what a way to go!
Thank you very much, guys.
Gonna go out.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.